Pablo Hernández calls out DHS and FEMA policies that are harming Puerto Rico, highlighting illegal detentions, bureaucratic delays, and lack of transparency. He emphasizes that enforcement and reconstruction should respect constitutional rights and serve all communities, regardless of political affiliation.
From Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, for 5 minutes of questions.
I have some matters of interest regarding immigration and FEMA, but before that, Mr. Kent, does the Bible say anything about freedom of speech?
Not a biblical scholar.
I don't think it does. And I'm concerned about singling out Muslims and specific religions to talk about how their religious dogma conflicts with our laws and constitutions. I lament that Ms. Noem has had to leave early today, but I wanted to talk about the atrocities that the DHS's immigration enforcement and the pain it is causing in places like my home district of Puerto Rico. Just a few weeks ago, we witnessed ICE shove a pregnant woman. I cannot imagine, as an expecting father myself, the anxiety that that family must have gone through when they took that person to the hospital and treated her for her injuries. Also, a few weeks ago, CBP detained Aracelis Terrero from the streets of Cabo Rojo. They put her on a plane. They sent her to Texas. She was in a detention facility. She was removed from the detainee location service, and she was not allowed to contact her attorney. Ms. Terrero was a domestic violence victim who was in Puerto Rico with a legal work permit. And I wanted to ask Ms. Noem if DHS policies allow CBP agents to detain persons who are legally in the United States. I wanted to ask Ms. Noem the legal authority behind the detention of Aracelis Terrero. I wanted to ask Ms. Noem why she was removed from the detainee location system. I wanted to ask Ms. Noem why Aracelis Terrero was not allowed to contact her attorney. Unfortunately, I predict that she would not have given us adequate answers based on the answers that she has provided to my colleagues here today. Now, I also wanted to raise a concern with Ms. Noem regarding TSA agents. In Puerto Rico, I witnessed how many TSA agents worked arduously without pay during the government shutdown, and how her announcement that they would get $10,000 as a bonus for working without pay during the pandemic actually created the opposite effect of boosting morale, because it was so selective that it excluded apparently most workers. And finally, I wanted to raise the concerns of red and blue mayors from Puerto Rico. I emphasize red and blue mayors, Republican and Democratic mayors, regarding her recent secret policy regarding transactions or grants for FEMA money that exceed $100,000. So to their surprise, they found out that grants and funding assignments exceeding $100,000 would now need to be approved by Secretary Noem. But there was no transparency regarding that rule. And we have no information regarding the application and the enforcement of that rule. And I sent her a letter with 15 other members asking those questions, and I got a letter in response that has no answers to these questions. And I wanted to urge her to reconsider this policy that is delaying aid and reconstruction funds for the people of Puerto Rico, which are still suffering 9 years after Hurricane Maria, and that this is affecting Republicans and Democrats, that reconstruction should not have a party ID, and that instead of fighting the bureaucracy, this has made the bureaucracy worse. But unfortunately, Secretary Noem left early, and we are left expecting these answers. Thank you, and with that, I yield back.
Pablo Hernández's statement presents a forceful critique of DHS policies under Secretary Kristi Noem, highlighting both legal and humanitarian concerns while emphasizing the ongoing impact on Puerto Rico. Hernández begins by framing his concerns in a broader social and moral context, questioning the use of religious references in public policy debates. By asking whether the Bible addresses freedom of speech, he underscores the danger of singling out specific religions, particularly Muslims, as incompatible with U.S. laws or constitutions. This framing situates his critique not merely as a political objection, but as a defense of civil liberties and constitutional equality. The core of Hernández's critique focuses on the practices of DHS and CBP. He recounts specific incidents illustrating the human consequences of enforcement policies. The cases of the pregnant woman and Aracelis serve as concrete examples of systemic overreach: physical aggression, detention without legal justification, removal from tracking systems, and denial of access to legal counsel. These accounts are particularly compelling because they highlight the vulnerability of individuals who are legally present in the U.S., including victims of domestic violence. By presenting these examples, Hernández exposes a troubling disconnect between the stated priorities of federal agencies, targeting genuine threats, and the reality of low-risk, non-criminal individuals being subject to aggressive enforcement. This contrast is central to his argument that DHS practices are not only failing to protect public safety, but are actively undermining the rights of citizens and legal residents. Hernández also addresses workplace inequities and bureaucratic mismanagement, citing TSA agents in Puerto Rico who worked without pay during a government shutdown. He criticizes selective bonuses as a mismanaged incentive that created resentment rather than morale. This point is significant because it illustrates a broader pattern. Policy decisions that are ostensibly intended to reward service or streamline operations often exacerbate inequality and administrative inefficiency. It demonstrates Hernández's attention to both human and systemic dimensions of governance. Finally, Hernández raises concerns about FEMA grant policies in Puerto Rico, highlighting the lack of transparency regarding approvals for funding above $100,000. By emphasizing bipartisan frustration, Republican and Democratic mayors alike, he frames this issue as a problem of governance, not politics. The delays in reconstruction funds, 9 years after Hurricane Maria, underscore the tangible consequences of opaque bureaucracy. Hernández's insistence that reconstruction should not have a party ID reinforces the principle that government resources must serve the public equitably, regardless of political affiliation. Throughout his remarks, Hernández emphasizes accountability and responsiveness. He critiques Secretary Noem's early departure from the hearing and predicts inadequate responses to his inquiries, signaling systemic failures in oversight. His approach is careful, yet firm. He documents instances of misconduct and procedural shortcomings, while linking them to broader constitutional and operational standards. The recurring themes, protection of civil rights, transparency, and equitable governance, highlight a consistent concern with both immediate humanitarian impacts and long-term institutional integrity. In addition to highlighting the immediate harms of detention and bureaucratic opacity, Hernández underscores the psychological toll these policies inflict on affected communities. By sharing the perspective of an expecting father witnessing the trauma inflicted upon a pregnant woman, he humanizes the policy debate, reminding lawmakers and the public that these are not abstract statistics, but lived human experiences. This element of personal empathy strengthens his argument that enforcement measures must be evaluated not only for legal compliance, but also for their social and ethical consequences. Hernández's remarks also illuminate a structural tension within federal agencies: the balance between centralized authority and local accountability. By raising concerns about FEMA grant approvals requiring secretary-level sign-off, he highlights how top-down decision-making can delay urgently needed aid, particularly in disaster-affected areas. This critique extends beyond Puerto Rico, serving as a cautionary example for other states and territories that rely on timely federal support. Hernández positions local leadership, regardless of political affiliation, as essential stakeholders whose input must be incorporated to ensure efficiency and fairness.